Detecting and responding to threats in the cloud is harder than doing it on-prem. Even when you do have the visibility you need, legacy security workflows weren't designed for the speed and complexity of cloud environments. Cloud-native security solutions from ExtraHop are purpose-built to spot threats across the hybrid attack surface, provide detailed investigation steps, and help you automate response. Request your 30-day free trial at securityweekly.com/ExtraHop. Well, welcome back, everyone, to Enterprise Security Weekly. I have an announcement, but my keyboard was too far away. Is your open source code secure? Learn how to verify your code during development and not after the build in our next webcast with Synopsys. Register for it by going to securityweekly.com/webcasts. I'll be talking about actually how to securely build containers, which is I think the first step into how you do software composition analysis is reducing your footprint. So we'll talk about how to reduce your footprint and then how to analyze what you've built. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Make sure you check it out, securityweekly.com/webcast. Here with me today for this interview, Ferruh Mavituna, the founder and CEO of NetSparker, no stranger to the show. Ferruh, welcome.
Hey, Paul. Thanks a lot for having me. It's nice to be back.
Yes, nice to have you here on the show. We're going to talk about time to value in app security, which I this one really resonates with me, right? Because I've been doing app security scanning since the old days, like early 2000s, right? Where you could churn through a scan over and over again, and going from the scan has completed to what was the actual value of those results and what impact did it have? Back then was a chore, right? Today we have a much better technology and processes, and I think much better awareness about application security, but still challenges. So, Ferruh, what are some ways to kind of frame the conversation in that time to value for application security?
Yeah. I think I'm mostly, time to value in terms of, especially in big organizations, is a huge deal, right? So you can get scanning and you can get results, and then you got a couple of problems. Like, first of all, your results need to be actionable, so you can prove that you're actually improving stuff, and you do improve stuff. So it's not just, hey, I reviewed 100 issues, and I don't know, I fixed like one thing, and it's obviously not that good. But also, kind of the challenge becomes significantly bigger as you go into big organizations with hundreds, if not thousands of applications, because now you are facing these very, very hot challenge of, hey, you have a budget, you have a project, your mission is secure to web applications, but like, how do you even get started? And majority of the applications, which I think is very important to understand, so majority of the organizations, they only secure their mission critical like 10, 50, 100 applications with a good enough process. So meaning there may be hundreds, if not thousands of applications is kind of, doing stuff, but not really getting anywhere. So a lot of these organizations are trying to do, hey, okay, I can do this for 10 websites, but how do you even do that for hundreds and if not thousands? And is that even possible? And when they started to approach it from the generally mostly accepted best practice, they realize after a year or so, it doesn't really work out because it took them 18 months to get anywhere. And in between, they need to prove to management that they are doing something, they are getting results, but also they need to prove their teams, developers, security people, and all of that. This stuff is actually working and we are getting somewhere. And that's not really generally happening.
Well, when you try and scale, Ferruh, from protecting the core set of applications to the thousands of applications you may have, where does SAST kind of fall down, and how does it need to morph and be truly effective, and then kind of also coupled with scanning as well?
Yeah, that's a very good point. So like, if you think about SAST, SAST is kind of, if you think about development, SAST is pretty much the first place. It's right after the design. So, your design needs to be secure, and it's unlikely to see any modern applications actually secure that design level. It doesn't happen, right? Not that often. If you have a big company, majority of your applications already designed by the time you're thinking about security. If you're a small company, well, you don't think about security. So it's kind of, if you're a big company and building any product, then you might be thinking about security by design, or if your product is very security oriented. So the security comes to question like very first thing. But right after the design, first thing that you do, writing the code, and SAST is there. Ideally you wouldn't and shouldn't introduce new vulnerabilities as right. And if you get the SAST right from the beginning, that's fantastic. Your application will be secure from the moment you press deploy, almost like in theory, right? There's the practice and all of that. But in theory, this works quite well. So where this gets super challenging is real world, and a lot of security managers, security engineers challenge, hey, look, I'm not building one new application. I'm not even building 5 new applications. I am building not only hundreds of new applications, but I also maintain thousands of applications. And, hundreds of them are like mission critical, needs to be up, needs to be secure, has private data and all of that. And then the others that I care about less, but it's still my brand. It's still data, maybe not that sensitive data. So if you're in this second bucket, and a lot of big organizations are there, they already have applications in the wilds. They already got a massive fingerprint in the world exposed to the internet, also in the internal network. And now they say, okay, we now realize web application security is a bigger problem than we anticipated, or we thought. Now we need to address that. But unlike network security, they got less stuff for application security with experience. They are lacking best practice, especially organizational best practice, but as well as even industrial best practice, because web application best practice is simply almost doesn't exist. You got best practice approaches, but no one really have an established or defined best practice at scale.
So and the challenge that when you describe that with SAST that I see is even within one application, you may have 2 or 3 different languages that you have to support, right? And let alone now you've got thousands of applications. You probably have at least half a dozen, probably more languages in there that have to be analyzed for vulnerabilities. And how do you do that in a standard manner? And also it falls on the developers, right? They may have a couple of different languages in their own application. And how do you treat each, vulnerability you're finding in all of those different languages and train your developers, not just in one language, but multiple, right? I mean, Python, JavaScript, Java. I mean, even if you look at CSS and HTML as a language, right, that could introduce vulnerabilities, all that has to be taken into account.
There is fair amount of complexity. And, one thing, I'm kind of digressing here, but one thing I think super important, because I keep hearing people saying, educate your, developers, educate your developers. By all means, do educate your developers. It's very crucial for them to understand security. But if you expect them to just understand security at a level, even your junior application security people do, you are mistaken. That's never going to happen.
Yeah.
There's just so much crap in application security and in all other security fields that a developer doesn't have time or need to understand, yet it's going to get you hacked. So this is just a fact. And to say, developers need to be trained, and if you think that's going to address all of your problems, you are mistaken. No, that's just part of the puzzle. That's an important part of the puzzle. It's not going to solve your problems, because particularly if you look at client-side security, complex server-side security problems, these are so easy to overlook. And a normal developer in no shape or form can be expected to keep up with that madness or the complexity of application security at that level. But you want them to cover that 80% 101 of security, and the rest still needs to be automation, security teams, and a bunch of pen testing.
No, I agree. It helps reduce your attack surface, but it's not the answer. Matt?
Right. And look, a developer doesn't even know all the components of some of these applications anymore. They have their specific kind of purview of the code that they're working on. And the most they can understand is their component. Then you have these distributed teams all over the place building the other components. You don't understand how some of these interactions happen. It's a really complex problem.
Oh, that is such a good point. What we have seen recently, we have seen, we are testing this one website, but did you know that one website also connected to 50 services and microservices?
Yeah.
And all of those also developed by other teams? Did you know that? Do you understand interactions in between? But all needs to be tested. And again, it creates like an extra level of complexity. So if you kind of take that very complex environment, and if you put yourself in the shoes of someone who is in charge of application security in that kind of organizations with 1,000 of applications, let's say, and like about 50 mission critical applications. Now, the big question is, you got a mission maybe directly from the CISO says, hey, like everyone is hacking right and left from over their web applications. We build our network security very well over maybe 1.5 decades in big organizations, right? They got massive experience on network security. I'm not saying they sold it 100%, but it's well understood, well invested. And even the security teams on network security is generally well beefed up with experienced people as well. People with even 20 years of experience in network security, because how old that part of the industry is. But when you're looking at your application security side of the game, you're going to see significantly smaller team, less understood environment, less invested tooling, less invested system or procedures and all of that. Even the vendor-wise, everyone is still in network security, even when you go, whatever you go, there's kind of like 2-3 very well-established players, and you can almost go either way, and they will be maybe 10%, 5% better or worse. We don't even have that in application security. There's like massive difference between vendors and all of that.
Yeah, and we were just talking in the previous segment about how you might have, you're a software company producing a product, right? You're in an enterprise, smaller enterprise, you may be using off-the-shelf commercial open source software, deploying that out, maybe having a couple of your own applications, all the way up as you start to grow into the Fortune 1,000, 2,000. Now you've got huge enterprise teams with thousands of applications. The solutions that you choose to provide security for your applications at any level vary so greatly, right? And like, when is the time to go get something like a Kubernetes, and then how do we secure it, right? When is the time to introduce a Redis server, which we were just talking about, and how do we secure it, right? And so we're all on this kind of journey, and at different points, you need different solutions. But what I like about the dynamic application scanning, right, the scanners, is it can test authentication, right? In a lot of junctures, it doesn't matter what code is behind it, what database, what technology. I can test authentication, right? And I can do that in a very uniform way. Now, of course, you can detect what language and frameworks might be used as well, and that's a benefit. But authentication is authentication, right? So we can run those tests, and we don't have to have developers learning how to provide authentication in 6 different languages. We still need that, but probably someone's going to make a mistake somewhere if you have 1,000 applications, right?
No, very, very good point. So, hence when you have that environment, now the question becomes, okay, if you were to start in like greenfield kind of project, new project, SAST is your starting point. Mm-hmm. But the conversation becomes, if you're in this environment with hundreds of applications, and then you got this mission to secure these applications with a small team and possibly a limited budget, like what do you do? You can pick your fight and say, hey, I'm going to go SAST, SCA, and all of that on the pipeline in hundreds of applications. Well, good luck with that, because even defining and getting the context and figuring out all your source codes in which pipeline, with integration, is going to take months in that kind of organization. Mm-hmm. And so the point being, the approach is being, hey, look, you got to prove. And not only prove, you got to actually move and making progress on your security. And the way to do that, if you start from the dynamic, then what you're going to do? Hey, today I am putting my 1,000 application, and tomorrow I already know which one of them can be hackable for a fact. With something like NetSparker, and is unique to NetSparker anyway, is proving a vulnerability exists with 100% and not having any risk of being a false positive. So that automatically changes the game, because you can put your 1,000 applications. Tomorrow it will tell you which 50 of them are hackable right now because there's a proven, let's say, SQL injection or local file inclusion or whatnot in those applications. Now you got a clear prioritization and progress. And at this point, which is the second part of the puzzle, okay, I've got, let's say, 1,000 issues that needs to be fixed, and it's prioritized, which is very easy to get there. It takes about a week almost. But now the bigger challenge begins. How do I get it fixed? And this is where you come into the integration, because you cannot just send developers noise. But if you send them actual vulnerabilities, and actual vulnerabilities only with 100% accuracy, without needing your security team double checking everything, now you remove the bottleneck of 5 people security team to secure 1,000 application, and then not offloaded, but integrated that into the developers' daily work, into their JIRA or whatever the bug tracking they are using. So what we discovered over the years, and we have been doing this for like 5 years with this kind of organizations, this is the magic solution to this problem. Get the vulnerabilities, prove them they are real automatically, remove the security team from the middle, pass the real proven vulnerability to developers with enough information to address. And when they fix it, automatically verify the fixes. And you can see now this stuff just works. And now your time to value is so short. It's unbelievable. It's unimaginable. When we talk and deliver this with organizations, their whole application security model, the way they think what was possible changes.
Ferruh, you've always had a great integration with ticketing systems, and you've had that for a long time. And JIRA is the most popular platform, right? And I'm sure you've run into the situation where you've implemented this project, it's scanning, it creates JIRA tickets. But what about the developers that are going to come in the next morning, right? And, they may know in their head, like, I've got a few, half a dozen JIRA tickets to process today, and this is what my day is going to look like. And then they log into JIRA, and they've got 10 additional tickets, and they're all security vulnerabilities. What's the process for managing that, right? Because technology, they need those 10 tickets, right? But there's a process at a personal level. How do you prepare and coach developers to go, you're going to get tickets now, they're going to be security related, and here's how we're going to handle them?
No, that's a very good point. And it's one of the organizational challenges. We generally work with the security teams to kind of define where they want to start from. And majority of them want to start from like very high level stuff. Yep. So they say, hey, look, if anything is critical, I just want to inject this into the teams. Mm-hmm. And they can build SLAs around this kind of stuff, especially on their ticketing side as well. And within the organization, and this kind of changes organization to organization, some of them bake this into their sprints. So they say, hey, X percentage of the utilization of a developer will go into these support issues. And they escalate it as like a site reliability problem. So, hey, I've got a production system that needs to be fixed. So it's urgent, needs to be addressed. And again, depending on the maturity of the organization, how they already can react to that kind of risks, or they generally got already a security handling policy around the bug crowd or, bug bounty kind of platform integrations, or the external reports just from, white hat bounty hunters or all that. And if that's mature enough, we just bake into it because it makes sense. But at the end of the day, in my experience, I don't think developers get agitated or angry or upset about actual findings they need to be fixing, because majority of the time they're somehow responsible for that anyway, or they introduce it themselves.
Right. I've been there.
And that's a very legitimate bug, and it's a critical bug, and they do understand it. But they're really, really upset if you send them noise.
Yes.
And they spent 1 hour only to figure out none of this stuff is actionable.
That's the
worst.
Then
the next time you send it, they will send you an angry email as you will be in the security team. And that's going to go south real quick, and it's going to be escalated to managers real quick, which we have, seen it so many times when it's implemented that way.
Yeah, we have history of this on the device vulnerability management side, right? I mean, this is the same analogy we had with the IT folks, right? We would go out, we'd scan, we find a vulnerability, we'd throw it over the fence, they have to go patch. Then there would be a fight whether the patch was applied or not applied. And it's taken us how many years, how many decades to get to the point where we are now starting to see some of the traditional device vulnerability management solutions start to integrate some of this prioritization themselves. It sounds like NetSparker has been ahead of this curve on the application side, because you're right. If we're not integrating the right data and the ability for them to take action easily, then they're not going to do it. And then we're going to end up in this fight like we see between security and IT when it comes to the device vulnerability.
Absolutely same. It just history repeats itself, right? And it doesn't seem like, we are learning much. But funny enough, as you said, even network security side of the game is almost catching up to this automation. If you look at network security products, not that I'm an expert on the field, but me seeing some pitches and new products and some products innovating and all of that, I am seeing, oh, great, they got like better workflow now, which is kind of funny because this has been a problem more than 2 decades in this industry. And now we only started to see proper workflow in the last maybe 2-3 years. And before that, it was most like, hey, let me create you a ticket. Now it's your problem.
Right. Ferruh, one of the things that I really want, if I put my application developer hat on, is when something in the process, whether it be a dynamic scanner or not, which certainly has this capability, identifies a framework or library that is in my application that's vulnerable, right? I want some automation behind that. I want you to go back into my build system. I want you to tell it that, hey, you should be on this version, not that version. I want you to build an instance of that application, run it through regression testing and QA testing. Then if it passes, then I want the notification. And I want to see the report that says, hey, vulnerability was found. We upgraded it. We ran through tests and it passed. Like, do you want to push this into the next phase kind of thing? Do people have, organizations have some of that level of automation?
So actually, I've seen that in, I think one of the SCA tools got a GitLab integration that's like literally, submitting a patch to the actual source code, right? I forgot the tool name, to be honest. I thought it was pretty cool. I haven't seen that automation in real organizations today. I think we're going to slowly get that in fixable problems as straightforward as you mentioned. Like, hey, if it's just upgrading, it will be just, hey, here is the pull request, and like you go ahead and do what you want to do, right? And there will be always cases, hey, we won't merge it and all of that. But the thing is, I think that's why everyone is trying to get at, like how much we can automate this stuff. And we will be too late to that game. And and I believe like as NetSpark, we are the frontiers in that automation guide, because we automated so much that no one has done before us and still haven't done stuff like automating verification of vulnerabilities, which is, we talk about trashing in bug bounty, and it's kind of funny. I read like this bug bounty research and people talking about, auto triage and all of that. I'm like, yeah, like 10 years ago we did that. We didn't call it auto triage, but like that's literally what we have been doing for the last 10 years and improving that technology. And, workflow, as we discussed, again, we built in 2015. We built two-way bug ticketing kind of integration with the verification of deployed patches, deployed fixes. And, and it goes on the list of that, because like our simple motto approaching to the security, hey, if something can be automated, we have to automate it, because there's only limited amount of security people with limited amount of skill set. They must use their knowledge and skill set only to problems that only human can solve. Hence, one of the reasons we launched a machine learning and AI department. Now we are developing features on that front, because like, when I started this in 2006, developing NetSpark, there were problems I knew could have been solved with AI, but at the time, developing such a solution was almost like a bunch of developers.
Right.
But today, it's so much more accessible, and everything on that front is much developed. Now we are like, hey, we can actually do this. And I might be looking at tickets created 9 years ago, and we're like, oh, now it's on our roadmap. It was on our backlog.
That's really awesome. Yeah, I mean, it's similar to that chaos engineering, right? I want something that has as much intelligence as possible to run around, find actual problems, and then tell people that can fix them. It's a very simple concept.
A library upgrade, probably pretty straightforward to automate. A SQL injection, probably a lot more difficult to automate. But if you could, think about it. If you found a SQL injection vulnerability that you could then figure out how to update the source code to fix that problem, what a great day for application security, but that's a much harder problem to solve than maybe just a standard framework or library update.
Mm.
Yeah, I think we're not gonna see that anytime soon. I've seen some SAST actually suggesting fixes, which is a good start. But in real world, like the languages, frameworks is super complex. Originally when I thought about this problem, my approach would be actually having better frameworks and better standardization among the frameworks, like web application frameworks. But unfortunately, framework developers, again, surprise, surprise, don't care about security. And they start with accessibility and a bunch of other problems that they want to solve. And security still almost always an afterthought. And we've repeatedly seen Ruby on Rails, .NET, .NET MVC, all of that, constantly introducing like dumb vulnerabilities and not having proper configurations for very obvious problems to solve that can be solved very easily, only to be added 10 years after the framework's invention. Yeah. So, 10 years ago, everyone knew that, they just didn't care. So it's kind of a shame it's such a slow progress world on the developer side, while majority of these problems would have been fixed at framework level so much easily. But I doubt it will ever happen, to be honest.
Yeah, because it's such a moving target, right? Like if there's a vulnerability in the application and something suggests a fix, that's really just saving me the time to go out to Stack Overflow to do some research to figure out how I fix it, take someone else's example, and then modify it so it works with my own code and do a own sanity check of, is that really a secure solution or not, which a lot of developers probably aren't doing, right? Or, need some training to get to that point. But then the next version of the framework comes out or you go to a different language and that, that whole process repeats itself. And even with newer frameworks and languages, there's 3 different ways to solve every kind of problem, right? And which one is best for me and which one is balancing that usability and security and maintainability. In all those factors, it's really hard to suggest a fix to a developer.
Oh, absolutely. There's a very clear statistical correlation between framework and vulnerabilities identified in applications. And if you don't know anything, you can just look at .NET and PHP,
right? And
you can see certain kind of vulnerabilities only exist in PHP or only exist in .NET.
Yep.
And it's just because, hey, while they are building .NET framework, this is the design decision they made, and by default, it made it secure. Or in PHP, they did this, and by default, it made it insecure.
Right.
Or even the decisions like magic quotes, kind of crazy decisions PHP are taken back in the day, and later on realized, oh, this was a dumb idea. Let's remove
they've backed off on a lot of those. Actually, the newer versions of PHP are a significant, not that it's saying much, but significantly better than the older versions, right? The older versions were really bad.
Absolutely. Like the older versions of PHP from a security point of view, like as a pen tester, if I start, back in the day, if I see a website, PHP, let's have the fun begin kind of, right? Right. There will be something. It was just so hard to make that stuff secure back in the day.
Right.
It's much better, but as we said, like it took maybe 10 years to get there, which is a shame.
That's why when I deploy open source applications, I do it with a CICD pipeline that lets me upgrade all of my frameworks, including PHP, to the latest version, test my app. If it's good, I push it out. That's where I think ops teams need to get to. Developers need to be there too. I mean, hugely they're not in an enterprise on PHP, right? But automating those framework updates and changing your code is hugely helpful.
Oh, yeah. Or you can do what Facebook does, right? Hey, I am on PHP. I'm just going to write my own compiler. So that's a step.
Yeah, I mean, you could do that. I mean, if you have an organization large enough to do that, I mean, the decisions we make are, can we implement authentication better than the services that are provided in AWS? Even with a pretty large dev team, probably not. And even if you could, do you really want to put all those resources into doing that? I mean, Facebook's obviously made that decision for PHP, but to me, that's a unicorn, right? That's not most enterprises.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's kind of it's unrealistic by all means, and there are like maybe a couple of companies who can afford that, and even then, I don't even know if it makes sense. They got other reasons to do that, so I get it, but. Yeah, like, PHP kind of stuff in the long term that as an enterprise just not suitable. You need better support. To be honest, even Java world is kind of burned by that in the end. And we don't know what what gonna happen to other frameworks. But you can see the technology is always a phasing thing and keep changing. As you said, definitely a moving target.
Yep.
Ferruh, one last question I have is, what kind of metrics are you seeing people using to try to measure this time to value from an application security perspective? What are some of those measurements you're seeing from your customer base, just to help others kind of get an idea of what should they be measuring to understand whether they're being successful or not?
Yeah, good point. So like a couple of things that we have been focusing with, and our customers. Time to fix is one of the values, kind of see how quick you are, how agile you are. When you send a ticket, a critical vulnerability, does it take like 10 days to deploy the fix? Or is it the same day? So it's like, again, based on especially criticality of the application. So time to fix is important. Another metric is, again, how many vulnerabilities you are introducing versus fixing. So are you getting better or worse in terms of like your trending? Obviously you want to get better. And we also, for example, grouping system among the websites. So you imagine you have a team in East Coast, another team in West Coast, and they got like different managers, different processes, whatnot. And now you can kind of benchmark them and say, hey, my team in East Coast introducing more vulnerabilities than my team in West Coast, despite of having that same kind of output in terms of code. And then you can say, I should definitely get like secure coding training for this team, because clearly they're still introducing the same vulnerability. Despite of fixing, they still don't fix the root cause. So I believe these are like really key things. How many vulnerabilities you're introducing, how many vulnerabilities you are fixing, how quick you are fixing the vulnerabilities that you find. And then not necessarily a metric, but kind of to do all of this, the one important step that do you even know what you have, which is like the whole discovery piece. You need to understand your internal and external exposure, because then you can say, hey, I've got 100 applications, and in each application on average, I've got only maybe 0.5 critical vulnerabilities. But 50 applications that you don't even know exists, maybe it's just like horrible. And you only realize, I got hacked. I didn't know I had that website. So, the point being, before tracking the metrics, you need to understand the assets and the inventory. And again, like very, a network security world kind of conversation, right? Like you got to get your assets management right. Only after that, you will get value from your vulnerability management.
Yeah, no, that's good. I mean, look, I think understanding what applications you have out there is a huge challenge for every organization, because there's just so much stuff out there. So if you can get your arms around that at least gives you a starting point. You know what you have. But those other two metrics I think were interesting, right? It's time to fix and are you fixing more vulnerabilities than you're introducing. That at least gives you some valid metrics to understand kind of, are you charting in the right way?
Absolutely. Ferruh, thank you so much for appearing on Enterprise Security Weekly. It's always wonderful having you on our shows. Folks that want to learn more about NetSparker can go to securityweekly.com/NetSparker. Ferruh, thanks again.
Hey, thanks a lot. Thank you.
And are we going to end the show or transition to the next interview? I think it's the pre-recorded interview with Ken Security. Stay tuned.